Average at Best Cornhole here. I got a couple of the newer sets for the 2025 stamp season from Killshots Cornhole. Have the Maverick, which came out earlier in the season, and then the Apache, which came out a little bit later. Now, this one was kind of fun to do because these bags are completely different. The Maverick here, you have a slower, very forgiving herringbone bag that's looser and thinner. And then you have the Apache that is super full and a hybrid material bag in. I tried really, really hard to get these bags to thin out some. They never really did. They just remained full and beat the heck out of them trying to get them to that point. Now, I'll get to more details on the bags, but when I laid these up here at first, I realized that you can really tell how much fuller the Apaches are than the Mavericks. Starting out with the materials, the Maverick, it is a herringbone bag, and I did mention the Apache is a hybrid material bag. This is the same slow side material you'd find on the Guardian, the Dart, and then obviously Killshot's Wolverine. The fast sides are the same. Those are the Viper Pro Sniper fast side. Killshot's website lists the speeds at a 5 on the slow side and a 9 on the fast side for both of these series, and that's pretty common. A lot of people consider herringbone a 5 or even more, and obviously a lot of people consider the hybrid material a 5 or even more. Hybrid materials definitely play faster. I always like to rate this one at like a 5 1/4, I guess. And then herringbone, we all know that you could slow it down, you could speed it up. It's real fast when it's brand new. I kind of touched on the template already, but the Maverick, I mean, they are thinner, and I would consider this a medium to large bag. Now, I don't know if that's all stretching or if the actual fabric squares were a little bit larger, but they definitely play and feel a lot larger than Apache, because the Apache, you know, are a medium bag, and they're definitely fuller than medium. So I know I say a lot of time medium fullness. These are definitely full bags, and I was inspecting them. I was wondering why. Like I said, we threw them a lot, threw them at the campground a lot through the night, just seeing if they would stretch. So I know they have a liner. If sometimes you can hold bags up to like a light, and if they don't have a liner on the hybrid material side, you can actually see light through them. These definitely have a thick liner, and it probably preventing them from stretching, but I just want to let you know it is definitely a fuller bag. Getting into the fill and flop, and the website claims that both the series have their Gen 5 fill. Now, filling the bags, I would say that's primarily all flat fill with some discs mixed in. I'm not disagreeing that it's a mixed fill, but I don't feel any rounds. And then the Maverick, like I said, it's loose, it's thin, it is a very floppy bag. Apache, on the other hand, I mean, the fill feels the same to me, but it's so much fuller than what the Maverick is. That's what kind of confuses me a little bit. And I know that the template on the Maverick, whether it's stretched or it was a larger template, you know, it is larger than the Apache, but the Apache are, you know, significantly more fuller than the Maverick. But their weights are, you know, their average weights are about the same. And I say average because weighing these Apaches, I was a little disappointed. There was actually a 0.26 difference between one of the bags, you know, the heaviest bag and the lowest bag. 0.26 ounce difference between just these 4 bags, which is, in my mind, that's a little extreme. I mean, that's the difference between a regular bag and a light bag. I've actually weighed regular bags and light bags where the ounce difference was less than that. So I was a little bit disappointed in that. There was some variation in the Mavericks, but not as bad as the Apache. Moving into the slide up, and I'm going to start with a highlight and a low light. And the Apache, it is a very active bag. That is the highlight of it. You don't normally get very active bags from hybrid material bags, but since it is so full, it definitely gives you a lot of action on the boards. The problem with that is, though, it has a tendency to kick a little bit. Even with that flat fill, I noticed these kicking, and when I was throwing them for like an extended period of times, it is so full that my thumb was actually getting sore from, you know, really trying to grip down and get a real good bite inside of the pellets on it. The Mavericks, on the other hand, completely different. For a herringbone bag, this is by far one of the most forgiving herringbone bags I've played. I know I've said that before, so I'm not saying it is the most forgiving, but I'm saying for a herringbone bag, super forgiving bag. The only problem is it is a little loose, and then I noticed sometimes, you know, when I went to lock the beads in, they shifted a little, and I always use my hand to, you know, guide the butterfly grip, and sometimes I had to give an extra push, so I made sure that the beads were, you know, locked in before I went into my backswing. But I was playing with a lot of beginners, people with, you know, out flat without a flat bag, you know, that had some tilt on them. A lot of people really like these bags because of how forgiving they were, and since they were a little bit slower from the herringbone, that's good for a lot of beginners, a lot of new throwers that throw way too hard because they weren't kicking on them, but they were still stopping on the boards. The Mavericks really make up for the lack of whole bodiness that you would get from a herringbone bag with flat fill because of the looseness and that little bit of a larger template, because they definitely are loose enough to grab the hole accidentally, even if you were a little off target. And the flat fill is forgiving enough that generally you do throw straight, so you really didn't even have to worry about that so much. But the larger template, I mean, that decreased your lane that you had to throw in because the bag is a little bit larger, so you can be off to the side a touch. Unfortunately, they are herringbone, they are flat fill, so they did hang up at times. I'm not saying plug the hole, I'm saying if you got to the hole and you weren't throwing hard enough, they might have hung in the front. They were easy to clean up. I didn't notice them hanging over too much, which I've seen sometimes where you're not able to nudge it, like it kind of like locks on the corner of the hole there. I didn't experience that with it, but sometimes those hangers in the front of the board are some of the best shots in cornhole because it just messes with your opponent right before they go to throw. Apache, they get their whole bodiness from the hybrid material and the fact that you can shape shots with them. So you can do things to get this bag going to the hole if there is some blockers and whatnot in front of it. I wouldn't say they had a ton of drip other than the hybrid material being a little bit faster, because I feel that, you know, they're just a little bit too fuller and they had that flat fill. So I really didn't see ones that sat there for a couple seconds and then, you know, really dripped in afterward. But they gave you the ability to shape the shots and, you know, get in a lane to that hole. Collectibility, in my mind, is where the Apache shines because you have a flat fill bag that's fuller. And to me, those bags do collect a little bit better, especially if you put a blocker off to your opponent's side a little bit. You know that you can come in with a cut, you know, direct this bag and square straight up to it to collect it. Or if you have a couple more bags to throw, you can just keep on nipping that corner and spinning the bag back around. They were really good at that, and they were a pretty good blocker also. So I was confident with the collecting that I could put up a blocker and knowing that I'm going to be able to push just right through it with the Apache and that faster slow side on it. You do need to be a little bit more skilled in making like crazy collects with the Maverick. And it did bunch up at times, I noticed, from that looseness. So, you know, grabbing ones off the side wasn't as easy, but it's still herringbone, so you could cut, you know, you could cut and square up to that bag to make the collect. So that made it nice. It's just that herringbone to me sometimes doesn't always collect the best anyways because it is slower, so it's kind of stuck on the board and you need to throw, you know, a lot harder to get stuff moving. And I experienced better collects with the Apache. Now that I'm throwing a lot more in summertime, I've remembered that speed consistency for a herringbone is an option. If you're playing indoors, you know, in a controlled environment and whatever, I've never seen an issue. Then it just matters about the boards. But if you got some boards that are sitting out baking in the sun, for some reason, herringbone to me just becomes super slow. And I'm not even talking about moisture. A lot of time when you get moisture in the evening or whatever, herringbone doesn't really slow down that much to me. Sometimes it feels like it speeds up a little bit. What I'm talking about is like the sun beating down on the boards and it's super hot. So you're not going to have that issue with the Apache or other hybrid materials. This is kind of funny to me. I'm about to discuss playability and I'm telling you the complete opposite of what I would normally tell you when we're talking about hybrid materials and herringbone. But I think the Apache is definitely a dirty style game. And I don't always say that hybrid materials are a dirty style game, but I'm going to tell you these Apaches are going to be great at playing a dirty style game. The hybrid material, you have that control, you have that versatility, you can lay those blockers. And with how active they are, you're going to be able to beat your own blocker, whether you're cutting or rolling or flopping or airmailing or whatnot, to get in the hole. I think it's better at initiating a dirty style game than what it would be, trying to run holes with it, which is common for hybrid materials. These herringbone Mavericks, on the other hand, I think they're super good at running holes, especially if you're on fast boards or, like I was saying, a beginner player or someone that's new to the game that doesn't have that flat bag that still throws really hard. They're slow enough and controllable enough with their forgiveness just to run holes with them, and they really are. They are a little bit of a larger template and a little bit looser too, so the chances of you grabbing that hole more often than not is there with the Maverick. And the fact that they can bunch up and squeeze since they are loose, I mean, it is herringbone. You're still going to be able to manipulate it a little bit, whether it's cut shots or roll shots, but I say you put a little slight cut on there if there's like an alley, a couple bags you're trying to squeeze through, and let that bag bunch up and just go right through them into the hole. You can find Killshots Cornhole at killshotscornhole.com, and I will say their website, if you've never been there, go check it out because they do give you a ton of information on the bags. Their proprietary stuff, their different fills, everything is just loaded information when you click on those bags. The designs, they also have a ton of awesome designs, and what I really like about their stock designs too is they usually give you, the speeds on the bag, and then, what fills in the bag, all that's printed on it. But then they also have all their crazy art designs too, and a lot of vibrant colors. And as far as availability, the website's pretty good. I know during release time, some bags sell out. It will tell you that they're sold out. But as of right now, when this video is going to be posted, that they're stocked on the website. Unfortunately, the problem with them is their base price is very high. It's $149.99 for each of these series. I think it looks like the Maverick came down in price already, probably for the end of the season. I did not notice that for the Apache. And Killshots does run sales a lot of the time. So I guess if you are in the market, keep an eye out for that. But I can't stand behind that price point for a set of cornhole bags anymore. And one of my biggest problems with it now is the Apache, this isn't the first set of bags that I've weighed from Killshots that had like such a variation in weight from one to the other, and that just really discourages me from wanting to pay that price tag for another set of bags. Like I started, these bags were a ton of fun for me to throw since they were so different, and I was able to compare them as I was throwing and I was switching back and forth and, seeing their difference. And it's just unique that I have two series here from the same company, and the herringbone bag is way more forgiving and, primarily the hole runner in my mind. And then you have the hybrid material bag that has a lot more action and the one that you're going to want to play that dirty game and shape your shots more with. But with that said, the Maverick might be a little bit too loose for some people, and the Apache might be a little bit too full for some people. But if you do like a fuller bag, maybe the Apache is right up your alley. And if you like a looser bag, maybe the Maverick is up your alley. I just want to end this with, you're going to be average at something, be average at cornhole.